we have a public hearing that was previously advertised in the Webster Herald and on our town website and social media platforms. So I am going to open that public hearing, and we have several people in the audience tonight that I think are signed up to take the podium to talk about this. But first we're going to have Matt Chatfield, the Executive Director of the Webster Economic Development Alliance, give a little presentation on the Restore New York Communities Initiative, which is essentially the topic of this public hearing. So I'm going to open the public hearing and hand it to Matt.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Matt Chatfield. I am the Executive Director of the Webster Economic Development Alliance. Big mouthful of words. It's our local development corporation where we conduct economic development across the town of Webster. So we are the entity that facilitates obtaining grant funds and making initiatives happen in the community. So this is just another area of push and focus with the West Webster Hamlet. So tonight, the presentation actually has two main parts. The first part I'm going to actually breeze through relatively quickly. It's already been covered, but it's largely describes the grant program itself, and then we're going to kind of get into the application. So the Restore New York Communities Program provides financial assistance only to municipalities. So it's actually, we use it as a pass-through. So municipalities can apply for the funds, and they can either conduct rehabilitation projects themselves if they own the property, or they can actually enter into a contract with a private property owner, whereby the private property owner would conduct that rehabilitation project and then get reimbursed upon completion. But the monies would flow from the state to the town and then to the private entity. So mixed-use commercial projects, residential projects as well. The project we're contemplating is all commercial. There are no residential components contemplated. Eligibility: buildings need to be vacant, abandoned, condemned, surplus. And we can do a whole host of things with that, including demolish buildings. We can rehabilitate them. You could potentially, if you had a historic building, you could knock it down and reconstruct it. That's the contemplated project for this application is to rehabilitate the structures that are being identified. Projects need to be architecturally consistent and consistent both with the municipality's zoning and comprehensive plan, but also within the context of the neighborhood. The whole hope is that whatever is completed will fit in and blend well with the neighborhood. This is not eligible for municipal buildings themselves, so it's not as if the town could apply for this funding and use it to rehab this structure or the library. Right? It needs to be for non-municipally controlled, non-municipally used buildings. And the goal is to revitalize urban centers. And for a significant period of time now, the West Webster Hamlet has been a focus of continued revitalization. The town was awarded about $100,000 last year, currently conducting a master planning effort for the Hamlet. And this is one of multiple projects that are sort of happening simultaneously as we try to facilitate revitalization within the Hamlet itself. But one thing that we do need to point out is that projects need to be in economically distressed communities. And one of the things that we're both blessed and cursed, right? Webster we're a strong and stable community, relatively affluent. But when it comes to applying for economic development funds, sometimes that puts us in a disadvantaged position. So the town has actually applied, or is actually conducting an income survey of a small segment of the Hamlet area itself, in hopes that we can identify potentially what I think many people would believe as we proceed is an area that's economically disadvantaged. And we're trying to understand exactly what that means and what that could mean for us, and as far as applying for additional grant funding for other programs, including this one. Funding limits: the town of Webster would be eligible to apply for up to $2 million for this project. Our application will be for slightly less. A whole host of public documents that are going to be required. I got them not in the paperwork for every parcel. And we also would need to hold this public hearing, as well as have multiple resolutions. In addition, we have to do a financial analysis for each property to sort of justify why should the public sector get involved at all? Why can't the private sector make this work on its own? And we need to show from a financial analysis perspective that there's a gap. And without this public assistance, you can't bridge the gap. So it's part of the reason why we conduct the application. And there's a fee. Municipality has to write. If you're going to end up writing a check for about $1,000, Mr. Supervisor. Luckily, it's not out of your pocket. So, and then there's a commitment fee. But the scoring for the application itself, economic distress is a high scoring component. If we're in a brownfield opportunity area, which we're not, if we're in another investment zone, we're not. And then, of course, program goals, inducing commercial investment, and project readiness feasibility. So we do our best to place our application in the best light possible to score as high as we can. SHPO, we need to go through the process to ensure that the project wouldn't run afoul of any of the State Historic Preservation Office's goals, and as well as the State Environmental Quality Review Act to make sure that we're complying with the merits of the secret program. And the application is due in 2 weeks. We've been working intently for the past 3 months on this. We're right down to the deadline, but we feel we have a decent application here. We're going to give it our best shot. So the West Webster Hamlet Revitalization Project. So we're going to talk about the buildings in more detail. I think we all know that the Webster Furniture Strippers building, we all know where that one is. I think everybody in the room is here either because of that building or one across the street. There's been years of effort on this particular building, dating back to 2017 when we also applied for Restore New York funding. Actually, at that time it was to demolish that building. But this time our goal is to rehabilitate. In addition to 600 Ridge Road, the Furniture Strippers building, the former G Palace, is being proposed for a project. The former Firemen's Association building at 603 Ridge Road. And initially we had outreach with the owners of properties across the street on Gravel. We're having just a mixed level of interest from those property owners to participate. But we do have, for sure, we have 3 solid properties, 600, 602, and 603, all flanking the intersection, all of which, a massive amount of investment would give a real shot in the arm to the hamlet, and we think could start to spur, some real great things happening in that part of the community. We need to publicly promote and advertise which sites we're talking about. We have 5 different sites that were on our notice of intent to apply, which is kind of like a precursor. Those 5 properties include 600, 602, 603 Ridge Road, 1041, and 1043 Gravel. And they all bolster that Four Corners intersection. So the Furniture Strippers building, it's an abandoned building. It has some environmental constraints associated with it. And we have a multi-part rehabilitation revitalization scenario that we're contemplating. It's hard to fathom that we could be talking about numbers that are this large, but when you start adding it all up, the building rehabilitation component is less than 50% of the actual overall project cost. So there are demolition site, there's some asbestos and lead abatement that would need to be conducted, there's soft costs, everything. These costs include everything from architects to attorneys to contingencies, investigations, fees, permits, basically soup to nuts, what it would cost for a private entity to undertake this sort of project. The anticipated Restore New York request for that is about $522,000. And there's actually been quite a bit of work to date that the town has done, even just to get to the point where we are today. At the bottom of the slide, I already did mention the income survey. The results of that, we're anticipating the results of that here in probably within the next hopefully by the end of this week. We don't have much time left. But that's literally where a consultant is hired, conducts a survey, and in addition to mailing the survey out and/or I'm not sure if they didn't do an email, but they mailed it out, and then they're following up with door to door. They're literally door knocking and trying to conduct a survey to understand what the level of income is within the general area. There was a structural assessment done on that property. There's been some environmental assessments already completed. In the process of being completed, it's still in almost finalized, but not finalized. This is just security of the structure. So the community has invested already close to $40,000 in trying to identify how do we solve this problem. So it's this is merely a down payment of public assistance to bring this project and this property back to life and reactivate it. The goal is that this is the only down payment of Webster town taxpayer dollars. Hopefully we can get the rest of it from others. Moving on, Jade Palace, former Jade Palace. What was the former? What was it called? What was the other? What was it
Heritage
before?
House.
Heritage House, right? Yeah. So there's been food, a tavern, some sort of hospitality services on this corner since 1873, maybe earlier. It even predates this building, when the prior building actually burned down and this one was constructed. The vision of the owner is to rehab the building in its entirety for a restaurant use. That is the intended goal. As you can see, we got about $1.25 million in investment for the rehab of the building, but then we're talking about the site work, potential asbestos abatement inside this building, soft costs, continued sales. About a $2.3 million effort. We will be applying for $880,000 to help assist in that. Former Firemen's Association building across the street, currently vacant. The second floor has actually always been vacant. They never actually finished the second floor because of egress issues. So there is no second form of egress from the second floor, therefore it can't be occupied other than there's a little kitchenette up there. But for the most part, the second floor of that building is something that remains vacant. So the goal of this project is to provide a second floor, a second primary ingress stairway up to the second floor, such that the floor can be finished and then rented out as part of future use of the building, most likely office. $199, basically $200,000 request for that project. And then the last for the two projects, we've identified some conceptual costs associated with potentially rehabbing these buildings, although to date we haven't really had much interest from the property owners specifically to participate. Maybe we'll turn around. We did exchange some emails recently. Kind of hopeful that they'll maybe find more interest in participating, but if they don't, then they will not be included in the build out. So that's 5 and 6, or 4 and 5, excuse me. So the total investment for those first 3 properties, the total investment we're projecting in the community is about $3.4 million, of which we're going to hopefully provide an incentive of state funds to the tune of about $1.61 million as part of our application. That is below the $2 million cap that we are permitted.
Thanks, Matt. And, well, I think also, and Aaron might be able to know this, I don't know if your presentation is on the town website and social media platform now.
No, because we didn't get it till 5. It'll be
Gotcha,
on after
yeah.
meetings.
And that's,
Admittedly, I was late. And
don't worry about it. That, just want to let people know, the audience and at home, probably within 24 hours, what Matt just went over will be on the website or social media platform, so you can review it at your own leisure. So Matt, I'll tell you what, before we get into questions from the board members about this, since it is a public hearing, we are now going to switch over to people in attendance who may or may not want to take the podium to talk about this, ask questions. And we're going to go right in order of how they signed in. So my old neighbor, Joe. All right. He goes first.
So, Mr. Supervisor, members of the town board, and others.
And Joe, I apologize. You have to give your name and address first.
Okay, I'm coming to that. My name is Joe Kozelski. My wife Linda and I live at 300 Arena View Lane in Webster, which is part of Hillsborough Cove development. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I wish to talk about a hidden gem right in plain sight. As I said, we live in Hillsborough Cove. As such, we drive along Ridge Road frequently, as do our neighbors. Every time I drive along this section of the road, I marvel at how unique it is that the ridge is elevated relative to the basic ground level on each side by 10 or 15 feet. I don't know, possibly more. I've mentioned this to some of my neighbors who also travel this road, and they said they never noticed that they were driving along the bridge. I thought that's pretty remarkable. It should be noted that it's highly unusual for a town or a settlement not to be situated along a stream or a river or some other type of waterfall. And Webster owes its existence to this ridge, of which at least some people are not even aware. And probably few realize this was the reason why Webster came to exist. Yet the town of Webster, along with the towns of Ontario, Williamson, and Sodas, owe their very existence to the ridge that runs through these communities, all which developed along Ridge Road. Originally, as I'm sure most people know, it was a game trail, then a dirt road, then a federal highway, I should say it was an Indian trail in there too, and now most of Ridge Road is a state road. That it is unseen by many people could be in part because the town has developed more and more, as the town has developed, more and more of it has become obliterated, as we have seen in recently the opening of one of my favorite stores, which is the new Country Max store, adjacent to the Creek Edge Farm Market. As the town continues to develop, it's possible that more and more of the ridge will be lost or not highly visible. The Webster Furniture Strippers and the J Palace buildings are both situated right on the ridge and serve as a focal point of this section of the ridge. Some people, me included, feel it's desirable that both of them be preserved, and there have been many uses suggested. The town has asked for ideas pertaining to this area. Now, my thoughts aren't entirely in line with the presentation that we heard earlier, but they're not inconsistent with it either. We feel that this section of the road represents many historical stages in the development of Webster in general, and in particular, West Webster. There are several architectural types of structures representative of the different periods of the development along the ridge. The Webster Furniture Strippers building is, in my mind, a classical, colonial, or Greek revival structure, most likely dating back to the early 1800s. The J Palace, I've read, is stated as being from 1883. There are many front gable side wing structures along this section of the road from the 1850s and the 1860s, including the Webster House picture framing building, which may be one of the very first structures along the stretch of the road. There are newer structures up to and including some more modern ranch homes situated on the ridge as well. Incidentally, there are several, maybe 11, as many as 11 Revolutionary War veterans interred in the cemetery at the corner of Ridge and Maple Drive. There is at least one-room schoolhouse. That's district number 3, by the way. And also a Sears and Roebuck's house along that stretch of the road. These buildings and all that stretch from Empire Boulevard to Bay Road would not exist if it were not for the ridge. Yet, as I said, the ridge goes unrecognized. This section of Ridge Road is truly unique. And I would suggest that the town of Webster strive to preserve and celebrate the ridge. I've written a couple of letters to the Webster Herald about that. If it were to be designated as an historical preservation district, it would likely turn into a very desirable section to live.
Hey, Joe, this is the least favorite part of my job.
Time's up.
5 minutes and 40 seconds. I gave
Okay,
him some
all right.
extra because he's my neighbor.
Okay.
And
I'm listening to you.
are you almost done?
Very close to the end.
Okay.
I'm sorry I've gone so long.
That's okay.
I can envision some ways in which such a project could be approached. The town of Webster should take advantage of this unseen, unique, hidden gem right in plain sight and do what it can to preserve and celebrate our ridge and the town that resides along it. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Joe. Well, that's a tough act to follow in the McNamara.
I'm going to pass it
You
this
don't
time.
want to follow that act.
No, it was good.
I'm with you. But I'll bet you Karen Anderson has no problems following that.
No, I'm upset.
All right, because we're not letting Derek. No. Bonnie?
No, thank you. I'll pass.
Joe?
Hey,
You should have just dropped the mic. Robert Ryan.
I'll defer to the next lady behind me.
Well, the next lady is my cousin. You ready, Judy?
Yes, although you've said everything.
Right?
I totally agree with Joe. I'm Judy Zakiri.
Oh, we gotta wait till you get up there, Judy, so we can hear you.
Okay. I'm Kay Judy Zakiri, and I live at 985 Cane Patch. And I agree wholeheartedly with Joe, and I'm going to find out which house is the Sears Roebuck. And the schoolhouse from 1861 still has a bell on the side.
did you get closer to the microphone, please?
Oh dear.
Hold it down.
Is this okay? Is this any better?
Great.
Well, I agree with Joe, if we haven't heard that. I want to conserve the history of it also. I love it. I envision my grandmother, who was born on Slocum Road during the Civil War. She went to a women's seminary down by State in Maine in Rochester. And I kind of like to think of her on horse, and with a horse and buggy, I guess. It must have been almost 80 in the 80s on Ridge Road. So I don't really want to see any more commercial development. I would like it to stay as interesting and historical as it is. I love it. I walk the road when the weather's good daily in my pink jacket. I wore my pink jacket because I thought maybe somebody might recognize me because I walk Ridge Road. Many times I go down Cherry Hill. I feel safer on Cherry Hill. But and I always face traffic because I want to see who's going to kill me. But I walk it because I love it. I just love it. I do have a suggestion. I've noticed the zoning varies depending upon where the road, on the stretch of road. I believe from Ryan's toward 404, it has a zoning that allows for greater commercial than the zoning on the opposite, it's on the north side of the road, as the zoning on the south side of the road has. And then when you get to gravel, I could be wrong, it wouldn't be the first time, it won't be the last. I think maybe both sides of that stretch might have the more commercial zoning than residential. I'd like to see it. I'm happy with what's there, the hairdresser, picture framing. We can all live with, those are residential type industries. So I'd like that zoning just to kind of encompass that whole stretch. It's a 1.1 long from Bay to 404. And I'd like to keep that just kind of the way it is. It'd be nice to have the buildings rehabilitated. But I do like the commercial and the historical aspect of it. So what's the zoning that is a suggestion? And then I'd love to see the sidewalk extended from 404 to 5 miles, so I could walk to my bank and Hagadorn and a few other places. I don't feel safe walking on 404 without a sign. But that's beside the point. I appreciate you listening to me, and I appreciate all that you have done, Mr. Tuso. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Judy. All right, is it Louise McGee?
Yes, I pass.
You do pass, huh? All right, and then we have, hey, Lynn Barton.
Hmm?
Lynn?
Oh, yeah, I'll just get up real quick. I wasn't going to, but.
See, that's why you sign it.
Hi, I'm Lynn Barton. I live at 50 Elm Street. And hi, Joe. We spoke on the phone. Now I can put a face to his name. I just want to say that I'm happy that you're going to hopefully protect the strippers, you know, the brick building at the Four Corners. I believe in adaptive reuse of our older structures, so I'm hoping that they can be preserved, especially the old hotel. Those don't usually survive in towns and villages, so it would be great to have a use for that. Keep it around. West Webster is not an area in town that has been well documented through the years, and I know the museum did a lot of research last year and had a nice display on that area, but we're always still going to be looking for more photos, more history on the buildings. I don't know a lot about the stripper building. In the village of Webster, where I've lived my whole life, there were sewer lines put in, and they documented each property and every person that had owned it from, you know, way in the beginning. So there's more documentation that helps give the history of some of our Main Street buildings. I don't know if sidewalks are possible in the future, but it would be nice, especially in the Four Corners area. I don't think you really have good sidewalks there. It'd be nice to add that so people could walk. Maybe it would encourage more businesses to go in. I don't know. I don't live there, so it's really important that the folks that live in that area let you know what they want done. And that's all I have.
That's great. Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks, ladies.
Well, there are people here that didn't sign in and came in late. Does anybody still want to take the podium? Okay, before we go to the questions from the board to Matt, interestingly enough, I know Judy and Lynn both referenced sidewalks. We got so many things going on in this area. Matt referenced a grant we got a while back that we're working on right now. In fact, Josh, was it late October? We did an open house at Liberty Lodge. I don't know if anybody attended it. and you saw some artist renditions of the traffic pattern changes there. Correct me if I'm wrong, aren't there sidewalks in that rendition?
Yes, that is a big component of various concepts that were proposed, yes, sidewalks.
Right. And this is where it gets kind of confusing. This public hearing for this grant is about those buildings. The grant that we got awarded a year ago or so that Matt and Josh are waist deep in dealing with, that's more about traffic patterns, sidewalks, widening roads, all that stuff. They're somewhat mutually exclusive, but they certainly strategically, we are going after both of them because, as you all know, there's a lot that's got to be done in that area. So, other than that, Bill, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions for that.
Jimmy?
Thanks for your presentation and thank you everyone for being here.
Patty?
I don't have any questions. I have perhaps a little different perspective. First of all, my mother-in-law called me the other day to tell me how excited she was to read about the possible revitalization of this area. She read it in the Webster today, and she went into when she and my father-in-law built their home in the late 1950s in West Webster, and how vibrant that area was, and she was excited to see that we could be bringing it back. Secondly, my husband and I bought our first home at 477 Ridge Road, right across from the cemetery, across from Maple Drive, so I'm familiar with that area very personally. And I do know that ridge. I know what it was like to live in that house that was about 5 feet off of 404 and have the morning bus come rattling by our house every day. But it is a beautiful area, and I'm excited to see this revitalization. It was a great neighborhood then. The home was built in the 1860s. Evidently, we didn't learn our lesson because then we turned around and purchased a home on Dunning Avenue that was built in 1890. We're still working on that. Lynn can appreciate it. She's right around the corner from me. So I just want to thank you for all of this, Matt, and I want to thank you for spearheading it. It goes back to the tremendous success of the Economic Development Alliance. Without that partnership that we have, I don't think any of this would be possible, because this is a big undertaking for a town board to take on with all of the other things that we do. So this partnership of the town, the village, the Business Improvement District, the Chamber of Commerce, and the school district are what make up the Webster Economic Development Alliance. And these are the type of projects that just enrich the entire community. So I want to thank you for your work on that.
Yeah, and Betty, I gotta say that, it's funny, Matt, I don't know if he approached the board or said to me in early November, mid-November, Tom, this opportunity came up with this Restore New York. It's a different rendition of years ago, but it's got a very short window. We have to do some quick milestones that ultimately ends up with a formal application on January 27th. This was within 3 months of the formal application. Private industry, we can make that happen. Government, that's a tough one, especially all the milestones. But Matt, we said, give it a shot, let's see what we can do. And he is really, the income survey, so critical to this, as far as, you can send in a grant request for $2 million or $1.6 million, and great, hit the deadline, but if you don't put in a robust, supporting documentation of why you should award that money to West Webster, then you're not going to get awarded. And he really coached us on, if you really want to be serious about going for this and seriously be in a position to get awarded it, we got to put our money where our mouth is on some income survey, the engineering, of the structural engineering report on 600 Ridge to see if it was even something that could be renovated. I got to tell you, I think after this, Matt, and I know you're probably a little bummed that the 2 other property owners that you referenced have not responded to you, but you've done a great job on this and put us in a position on January 27th where we can apply, so thank you.